Everyone. My name is Shruti Sharma, and in this year, in the Civil Services examination, I got AIR 1. Today, I'm having a session regarding mainly answer writing as to how I approached answer writing in my general studies papers. I got a total of 494 marks in my general studies papers, and there were a few things that I tried to do before the examination in terms of preparing a strategy for it, preparing some content for it. So I'm going to try to share what I did during this time. As to how this session is going to be structured, firstly, I'll talk about certain basic things that you can apply in all 4 papers, and then we're going to go subject-wise, paper-wise, where GS1, certain questions will be seen, and I'm going to try to pick up a few questions from this year's mains examination, and we'll see as to how they can be tackled. First GS1, then 2, then 3, and 4. So without further ado, let me jump straight into it. Firstly is understanding the basics of answer writing. So there are a few things which I think are important. Firstly is the idea of understanding the question. Understanding the question, I feel if you just understand the question to a certain extent and only answer what is being asked of you, then more than half of, or at least half your work is done. Because sometimes, especially at the very beginning of our preparation, we just see certain keywords in the question and answer whatever we know of that specific topic. And that's in that process somewhere, the point of the question we forget, and midway through it, we start writing anything and everything, and by the conclusion, what you're writing is completely different from what is being asked in the question. So make sure that you have the question always in mind, break it up into certain parts, underline keywords in the question. Sometimes, you can divide it into A and B parts, sometimes you can write it in paragraph form or in point form, but based on what the question is demanding. Secondly, in corollary to this, and I think if you understand the question also, coherence in the question, in the answer writing also comes. Because some people have this, I think, needless debate on whether you should write in paragraphs or whether you should write in points. I feel as long as you're able to express a good number of points and in a good flow with maximum coherence. Point making does not mean that, the examiner is not able to understand what you're writing. So coherence is very, very important. So for example, with respect to this first point, there was this question in GS3 this year about blue LEDs, about a Nobel Prize which had been given to the discovery of blue LEDs in the 1990s. But if, for example, you completely do not answer the question and answer whatever you know about LEDs, the point of the question completely goes away, and it's very likely that you'll get very less marks. Even if you know whatever limited information about blue LEDs, try to shape your current knowledge according to what is being asked. So try to write about blue LEDs and what you think they are and how they can, help us in daily life. So this is understanding the question. With respect to, again, flow, legibility and coherence, you can choose whatever you like, are more comfortable with, whether it's paragraph or it's points. I personally was more comfortable with points, so I chose that because I felt I could include more dimensions in it. But the flow should not be hampered at any point. Second is, again, a very, very important part in answer writing and a balance that many people find very difficult to sort of balance: speed versus content. And I think no part of this should be neglected. If you're, for example, you have good handwriting speed, you can complete all your 20 questions, but you don't have the necessary content, there's no point in it. Similarly, if you have the content and you're writing, say, the first 5 answers really nicely with a lot of good content, good handwriting, good pictures, but you're leaving the last 5 questions or leaving the last 3-4 questions, then you won't get the desired marks that you want. So a balance between both speed and content is required. You need to understand that content building happens before you enter the examination hall. So make sure that you have good content ready with you. And how will you have good content ready with you? You need to keep in mind the syllabus, you need to keep in mind the previous year question papers, and have at least 1 or 2 pages of information and content based on the syllabus that you have. And keywords are mentioned in the syllabus, which you should definitely work on. And here, In terms of content, I think, say for example, GS3 paper this time, there were a lot of questions which most of us did not know who attempted the paper. But at the same time, we know that there are certain low-hanging fruits which you do prepare. Even in GS3, you can get sort of good marks in those questions. So for example, in GS1, there are social issues, clear-cut mention of topics in the syllabus which do come. So for example, population, urbanization, women's issues, you can at least prepare 1 or 2 pages of notes. Similarly, for GS3, questions on internal security. 4 questions definitely, 3 to 4 questions definitely come on internal security, and you can definitely answer them if you have good notes prepared, and that won't take too much time. So the effort you put in internal security versus the reward that you will get in GS3 are very, very commensurate, right? So identify those areas where you can build good content, and that will help you. Similarly, cyber security. Similarly, say in GS3 there's food processing, in GS2 there's governance related issues, NGOs, SHGs. Questions from those topics come necessarily 1 or 2 each year. So prepare good content on them. Apart from that also, focus on building good content which you can use in your answers. At the same time, practice for good speed. If you have good content, doesn't mean that you can translate it into speed unless and until you practice answer writing. So for speed, the only thing that I would suggest to you is do answer writing. Even in the 3-hour paper, make certain internal sort of limits on yourself. Put certain internal limits on yourself. Ki acha, 1 ghante mein I'll complete these many questions, half an hour mein these many questions, and stick to it, right? So this is speed. Third, once you have speed, you have content, you have understood the question, then comes structuring of the question. And the structuring can be of 2 types. First is the content-based structuring, and the second is the spatial structuring, right? So in terms of content-based structuring, firstly, you know there's an introduction, there's a body, there's a conclusion. So this is usually the structure we follow in terms of how we plan out our answer. Sometimes this can, change a little bit, that's completely fine, but usually you should have a 2-3 line introduction, then followed by a body with a certain number of points, or even if you're not writing in point form, but there should be a certain amount of matter or more than one dimension only that you're looking at. So the more the dimensions you have in your answer, the more it's likely to fetch you more marks, right? And then you have a conclusion which can be forward looking, which can include good terms, it can include good examples, it can include a way forward in terms of suggestions. So all of that you can work on. Again, in terms of content, you should always go back to what the question is asking, and therefore divide your main question into, say, 2 parts or 3 parts. If it has 3 parts, the question, divide it into 3 parts and answer accordingly, right? So this is for content structuring. For spatial structuring, I think you need to understand that, this is the page which has been given to you, to utilize it to the maximum possible. And sometimes people say that, I don't have good handwriting. How do I, then fetch good marks? The examiner will not want to read my copies. But the most you can do out of it is, for example, if this is the question which is answered here, start writing here, then underline keywords to, get the attention of the examiner. Then you can, this is the first, say the first part of the question is here, so you start writing it here. Then within it, you start writing points here, right? And then if there's a further sub point to it, you start writing it here. So in terms of spatial structuring, you can start from here, then leave a margin, write points here, then for sub points, you can write it here. For examples, if I had to write, I use a triangle. For points, if I had to write, I like to use like circles. So these are little things you can do in terms of, making your answer look more, utilizing the space which has been given to you in that one page. So that is in terms of structuring. Then we come to the 4th point, which is embellishments, which is like I call embellishments in terms of like you're adding things to your answer. Apart, so there are certain people who follow all of these 3 things, still they're not getting the adequate amount of marks to make the top ranks or make a good cut in terms of mains examination. So what I think helped me this time around, and I tried to work on it, was working on adding additional things. So it could include examples, which I personally sort of used to scour out the newspaper for, certain examples which I could use according to the syllabus in each paper. Then committee names in, say, GS2 paper, or data in GS3, in economy, in environment. Then certain government reports are there. So economic survey, you can cite that, this is something that the economic survey said in GS3. Similarly, you can talk about any key terms that you can find. So anything which adds to the answer in terms of examples, in terms of, and also in terms of diagrams and maps, especially in say GS1 in geography, you can use that. I used some maps in history as well. So anything that you can, flow charts in GS3. So have a ready collection of them. If you don't have, you can, there are certain materials you can access, or a certain corpus copies or collections that other people have given. So try to add stuff if all of this work has been done. So remember that embellishments, you can't like just start by adding embellishments only, and that won't add content to your answer. Make sure that your basics are strong, your content is strong, your structuring is fine, your speed is fine, and then focus on adding the extra marks fetching things that will make your copy stand apart from the previous person, right? And then based on all of these 4 things, what you have to do is you have to practice. Practice means, if you're doing practice at home, writing a few answers every day, that is fine. If you're showing it to someone else, that is fine. If you're enrolled in a test series, attempt those test series rigorously, attempt those test series within the fixed time limit, set those time limits upon yourself. Once you've written, then analyze your performance. In terms of that, analysis can be done, say, whatever feedback you've been given by the mentor, by whoever has checked your copy. If you're showing to a friend who has written the examination and can give you some advice, he or she can analyze the copy. You yourself can analyze your copy based on the model answer that has been given to you, based on any other material that you find on the internet. But that analysis should be done very judiciously. You need not take every advice that you get. You need not add every single point that you get. You need to prioritize the points. Even when you're writing points in any of the 4 papers, I think it's important to write the best point the first, because sometimes there are 10 points you can write in an answer. You don't have the time, you don't have the space for all of that. So write the best answer, best point first, and then accordingly, according to importance. And by the end, by chance, if you don't have enough time left, you can leave out the other points. But if you leave the good point for the end, then it's most likely that you won't get adequate amount of marks, right? So analyze what you have to do, analyze your loopholes, analyze based on all these parameters where you're lacking, work on it. And then most importantly, just don't do answer writing randomly, but try to improve. So the next paper that you're writing based on this analysis, make sure before you're sitting down for writing the next paper that, in this paper specifically, I will make sure that I will write an introduction like this. If I get a question on social issues based on, say, secularism, this is something that I will use in the introduction. Last time I did not, write enough points. I will make sure that I write at least 7 points in a 10 marker. Something like that. So make those targets for yourself and make sure that you improve the next time you write, and you're not writing